Age gap relationships have a 60% failure rate. Same age relationships have a 63% failure rate. So the age gap isn't what breaks these relationships. Something else does. And the thing that actually breaks them, or holds them together, is the one thing nobody in this conversation has ever named clearly. That's the question most men in your position have been carrying alone, because everyone around them has already decided the answer. I'm Marcus, and if you're a man over 55 who's attracted to women significantly younger than you, and you've never had one honest, non-judgmental conversation about what that actually means, this is that conversation. Before we go anywhere, I need to separate two conversations that get constantly confused. Conversation 1. Should you date younger women? That's a moral and social question. You'll get a verdict in that conversation. From friends, from family, from strangers on the internet. Everyone has an answer. Nobody is asking what you actually need. Conversation 2. How does this actually work? And what breaks it? That's the conversation you came here for, and almost nobody is having it honestly. Most of what you've heard about older men dating younger women falls into one of two categories. Category A. Social judgment dressed up as concern. Are you sure she's not just after your money? What would your kids think? This is just a phase. Category B. Cheerleading dressed up as support. Go for it, man. You deserve this. Age is just a number. Live your best life. Neither one is useful, because neither one answers the actual question, which is, what's the gap that actually matters? Not the age gap, a different gap entirely. The life stage gap. Not the age on the driver's license, the stage of life each person is actually living in, and whether those stages can meet somewhere real. That framework is what this video is built on, and once you see it, you'll never evaluate one of these relationships the same way again. Here's the thing that age number alone doesn't tell you. Two men at 62 can be in completely different life stages. One is winding down, financially settled, kids grown, energy conserving. The other is mid-build, new project, still expanding, appetite fully intact. The same is true for women. A 40-year-old woman can be in a completely different life stage than another 40-year-old woman. Research from the Journal of Adult Development found that chronological age predicts actual life stage only 34% of the time, which means when you're evaluating whether an age gap relationship can work, the number is the least reliable data point you have. The question that actually matters: are you two in compatible life stages? Is she building something you've already built? Or is she somewhere you currently are? That overlap, or the lack of it, is the life stage gap. And it's the only gap that actually predicts outcome. Here's what I call the verdict culture, and why it's specifically wrong for men in your situation. When society sees an older man with a younger woman, it runs one of two preloaded narratives, and it runs them automatically without data. Narrative A, he's compensating for something. Narrative B, she's after something. Neither narrative requires any information about the actual two people. Neither narrative asks about life stages, values, or genuine compatibility. Both narratives arrive before the conversation. A 10-year analysis by the Relationship Research Institute found that men significantly older than their partners report higher relationship satisfaction at year 5, specifically when life stage alignment exists. Not age compatibility, life stage alignment. The verdict. Culture will never tell you that, because it's a culture built on verdicts, not data, and verdicts don't update when new information arrives. The counter strategy. Stop performing your defense for people who've already decided. Start running the actual analysis on life stage, on values, on what each of you is genuinely building. That analysis is what the blueprint is for. This is the payoff most men in your position actually came for. Not the data, not the research. This question: am I running towards something or running away from something? Running toward. Genuine attraction to a specific quality this person has that aligns with where you actually are in life. Running away. Using her youth as a mirror that makes you feel younger. Using the relationship to avoid the parts of aging you haven't processed. Using her admiration to fill something that was empty before she arrived. The test is not comfortable, but it's the most honest thing you can do for yourself and for her. And here's the data-grounded truth. Men who fail the mirror test don't just fail the relationship. They damage themselves in ways that take years to recover, because the void they were filling doesn't disappear when she does. Men who pass it, who are genuinely running towards something real, have a completely different experience, even when those relationships end, because they were built on something actual. If you're still here at the 5-minute mark, you didn't click away from the mirror test. That takes something. Most people don't want a mirror. They want confirmation. The next section is where this becomes a blueprint instead of a diagnosis. The 3 dynamics that make age gap relationships genuinely work, and the 3 dynamics that break them, specifically at your age. Stay with me. Based on relationship longevity research, not dating coach opinion, not cultural narrative, here are the 3 dynamics that show up consistently in age gap relationships that actually hold. Dynamic 1. Asymmetric complementarity. She brings energy, a different perspective, a stage of life that's still building. He brings stability, pattern recognition, a kind of groundedness that took decades to develop. These are not the same things. They're not supposed to be. They're complementary asymmetry, 2 different things that fit together specifically because they're different. The critical distinction: complementarity is not a hierarchy. It's not she's below him or he's above her. It's 2 different things that create something neither could create alone. When that dynamic is genuine, and both people can feel that it is one of the most robust foundations a relationship can have. Dynamic 2. Explicit expectation architecture. This is the one most men avoid because it feels like it kills the romance. It doesn't. The absence of it kills the relationship. At your age, you've lived enough to know what you want and what you can't give. That clarity is an extraordinary asset if you use it early and honestly. The specific conversations. Children, if she's in an age where that's still a question. Timeline expectations. What long-term means to each of you specifically. Not because you need to negotiate everything before the first date, because 18 months in, when those gaps emerge silently, they become fractures that were always going to be there. You just chose not to see them. Dynamic 3. Sovereign independence. Both directions. This is the one that separates age gap relationships with genuine depth from the ones built on power imbalance. She has to have a life that works without him. Her own income, her own community, her own purpose. Not because dependence is wrong, but because a woman who is genuinely independent and still chooses him is a completely different person to be with than a woman who needs him to function. And he has to be the same. His life cannot be built around her. His identity cannot depend on her youth making him feel more alive. When both people have full lives outside the relationship and choose each other from that fullness, the dynamic is sustainable. When either one is filling a void with the other, the clock is running. The same research identifies 3 dynamics that consistently predict failure in age gap relationships, not from a moral standpoint, from a predictive standpoint. These are the patterns that show up in the data. Breaker 1. The youth mirror problem. When a man's primary draw is how she makes him feel about his own age, not who she specifically is, but what her youth reflects back at him. The relationship has a built-in expiration date because she ages. Every year, she's a year older. The mirror shifts, and the thing he was using her for, the feeling of youth adjacency, gradually disappears. Not because she does anything wrong, because time moves. Relationships built on the youth mirror don't fail dramatically. They fade. The connection that felt electric at year 1 feels inexplicably hollow at year 4. Nothing specific changed. The mirror just got less reflective. Breaker 2. The stability control confusion. She wants his stability. That's genuine. Stability at your age is a real and substantial quality. Financial, emotional, experiential. But stability and control can look identical from the outside. And she's the one who decides which one it is from the inside. The distinction? Stability says, I have a life and I'm inviting you into it. Control says, I have a life and I'm managing you within it. Men who've spent decades in leadership roles, in provider roles, in decision-making roles, the language and the habits of control can become second nature. When those habits transfer to the relationship, she feels them, even when he doesn't see them. She doesn't want your youth. She wants your stability. But stability and control look identical from the outside, and she's the one who decides which one it is. Breaker 3. The unspoken timeline divergence. This is the one that's least dramatic and most common. Both people want the relationship to work. Both people are genuinely invested, but they have completely different implicit timelines, and neither has said it out loud. She's 38. Some part of her, even unconsciously, is still factoring in whether children are possible, whether this is the person she'll eventually build with, what long-term means for her life stage. He's 63. Some part of him has already answered those questions. His timeline is different. Not wrong, different. When those timelines stay unspoken, they don't disappear. They accumulate pressure underground until something small, a conversation about the future, a friend's pregnancy announcement, a casual mention of what do you want in 10 years, releases that pressure all at once. And both people are surprised by how much had been building. If you're at the 9-minute mark, you've sat through the mirror test, the 3 things that make it work, and the 3 that break it. You didn't skip to the blueprint because you wanted shortcuts. You stayed because you wanted the honest picture. The next section is the blueprint itself. 4 principles for men who want to approach this with the same intelligence they've applied to every other significant decision in their lives. When you're assessing early compatibility, not just attraction, but actual compatibility, stop asking about her age. Ask about her life stage. What is she building? Where does she see herself in 5 years? What questions is she still working on? What has she already answered? Not as a checklist, as a genuine curiosity about where she is. Her answers tell you more about compatibility in 5 minutes than her birth date tells you in 5 years. Action. In the next conversation, notice which questions you ask. Are they about her past or about where she currently is? Life stage lives in the present and near future. That's where the compatibility information actually is. Early in any relationship that's showing genuine depth, before you're emotionally invested enough that the conversation feels like a threat, have the timeline conversation. Not, where do you see us in 5 years? That's pressure, not honesty. Something more like, I want to tell you honestly where I am and what I'm looking for, and I'd like to know the same about you. Not because this is negotiation, because I think you deserve honesty about what I can and can't offer, and I'd like the same. That conversation is uncomfortable for 30 minutes. The absence of it is devastating for years. Men who avoid it aren't being romantic. They're deferring a fracture. The most sustainable version of this relationship is one where she has a full life that works without you, and you actively support that, not as a strategy, as a genuine value. This means not filling every space of her time, not subtly discouraging her independence as the relationship deepens, not letting the stability control line blur in the direction most men unconsciously let it blur. Her independence is not a threat to your connection. Her dependence is a threat to her growth and eventually to her respect for you. The men who've been in these relationships long enough to know, the ones that lasted, were the ones where she was choosing him from a full life, not falling into him from an empty one. Everything in this blueprint, the life stage alignment, the timeline conversation, the independence dynamic, all of it rests on one foundation. You've done the mirror test honestly. You're running towards something specific in her, not running away from something in yourself. Your life is full enough that she adds to it, rather than completing it. Your identity isn't dependent on what she reflects back at you. If that foundation is solid, the rest of the blueprint is learnable. If it's not, the rest of the blueprint is just technique covering a void. And technique covering a void eventually cracks. The order matters. Mirror test first. Blueprint second. I want to say something before we wrap up. Not about the data, not about the framework, about the question you carried into this video that nobody in your life has been willing to answer honestly. Am I doing this for the right reasons? Here's what I can tell you. The fact that you asked the question and that you sat through a mirror test rather than skipping to the how to get younger women section, that says something real about you. Men who are in crisis don't ask that question. They avoid it. Men who are running away don't want a framework. They want permission. You wanted the honest picture. Wanting connection with someone significantly younger than you isn't automatically a symptom. It isn't automatically evidence of crisis, and it isn't automatically wrong. It's a human experience with a real complexity that deserves to be treated as seriously as any other significant relationship decision. The verdict. Culture will keep handing you its preloaded narratives. You don't have to accept them. You also don't have to react against them. You can simply do the honest work, the mirror test, the life stage analysis, the blueprint, and let the work be your answer. A man who knows why he wants what he wants is not a man in crisis. He is a man making a conscious choice. And conscious choices, even imperfect ones, are the foundation of a life lived with honesty. That's what you came here for. And that's what the blueprint is for. I want to ask you one question. Not, what do you think about age gap relationships? Not, have you been in one? This. What's the one question about this you've never been able to ask anyone, honestly? Not because you were ashamed, but because you knew they'd already decided the answer before you finished the sentence. Write it below. Not for me, for the man at 61 who's going to scroll through these comments and find his own question in yours and realize, possibly for the first time, that someone else was carrying it too. This community is built for men who are willing to ask the honest questions instead of accepting the preloaded verdicts. If that's you, and you've stayed 15 minutes, so it is, consider subscribing. Not for the numbers, because you deserve a space where the honest questions get honest answers. This is Sovereign Male Dynamics, where the verdicts end and the real analysis begins. I'll see you in the next blueprint.